I want you to get together.
In a world where 54% of Americans read below a sixth grade level,
Could you read this?
It's impossible. I just see his words everywhere.
one man wrote a book about the hidden truth behind clowns.
I finally finished it. But everything's gonna be okay now.
Links down below to the Amazon.
But he was about to find out
Your primary market is the USA, and it ranks 36th in global literacy rates, with over 43 million adults unable to read or write.
getting the truth to people is no day at the circus.
You know, sometimes I wonder if I'm the real clown.
Nobody reads anymore.
Have you considered recording an audiobook?
You're going to get a sore throat.
You're serious about this, aren't you?
You don't understand. I have to do this. The people have to know.
That book will ruin everything.
I will not use AI to record this.
We can't let him reach them.
This is just something I need to do. I don't even like clowns. The end.
Now they can hide that they're completely illiterate. This is amazing.
This season, playing on rectangular devices with black screens near you. The Nephilim looked like clowns. The audiobook.
All right, I'm here today with Paul Stobbs. Paul, thanks for joining me, man. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Yeah, it's good to be here.
Last time we talked, we just kind of was shooting the breeze about different topics, and the only reason I did that was because I feel like you've probably done 1,000 interviews, and including your own YouTube channel. You have a ton of content out there about the Nephilim look like clowns. But the more I thought about it, the more I was like, I really need to get a better understanding of it. So maybe I should invite him back on to come and give a deep dive, I guess you could say, on the Nephilim look like clowns. The book, the first book, I think you're going to be working on the second book soon. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm trudging my way slowly through the second book. It's a long process in between raising two kids and, you know, the rest of it. I'm doing what I can when I can, and I've not set a date for when that's going to be released, but there will be a second final volume to complete the series. But yeah, the first book is already out on Amazon. It's been out for over a year now, since July 2024, I think it was, when it was published. And it's done really well. It's sold about 6,000 copies already. It's getting good reviews. It's on about 4.8 on Amazon, and I've just released the audiobook a few months ago. I recorded it myself. It took me about 3 months to do on my own in this little office with this microphone, and I've just released the second edition of the book now, the revised edition, because as I was doing the audiobook, saying it out loud, there was a lot of edits I made just to make the flow a bit better, you know, and so the book matches what I say perfectly now in the audiobook, and it's just, it's been a long process doing that. I realise now in the second book I'm going to have to do the same thing again, so it's going to be a very long, arduous process, but yeah, that's what's going on with the book there, and like I said, if you want a copy, you can go into Amazon and get yourself one there.
I'm excited to talk about it, man, because like I said, again, we were just kind of talking about Hat Man, and we were talking about a little bit about psychedelics, which I guess we'll get back into in this conversation today.
Oh, yeah.
But what first led you to connect the Nephilim with the sort of archetype of clowns or jesters or what have you?
Yeah, well, it's a little bit out of left field for even me, because I'm not like a clown enthusiast or anything. You know, I don't care about clowns. I've never like once had a second thought about them in my entire life. You know, they've never been a focus of mine for anything. It's just, it was an odd series of connections firing up in my brain over years of just research and observation that made me just one day ask the question, is there really something here between clowns and demons, like as we understand them? And I can tell that story as quickly as I can, because I know we're strapped for time. I give like an abridged version of it, but I've kind of told this story 1,000 times. You know, if anyone wants to know, you can. I counted them. I've done about 50 podcasts talking about this with varying lengths of degrees of kind of explaining where I got the idea from and who I am, and like delving into the minutiae details of certain aspects of the theory. But it's a very big, broad body of work, shall we say, that covers a lot of things. But the introductory story is basically that I grew up a religious. I wasn't really a religious person, not a religious household, more of an atheistic type, you know, going into my edgy teen years. But I was also an artist. I've always been able to paint and draw and colour. I have a degree in fine art. You know, I've always studied art. So I'm a very visual person. That's probably a good way to summarise who I am as a person. And I've always been into history, reading books. I've never been one to just to watch sports or play that type of games with the boys or anything. I've very much just kept to myself while they're doing that over there and studying most of my life. And it's just who I am. It's what I like to do, you know. So when I got into university and I kind of had my waking up moment, shall we say, to come to conspiracy theory, I was very much a new agey, Gnostic-y, Taoist, weed smoking, psychedelic taking, partying, hedonistic, nihilistic, typical stereotypical art student, you know, by that point in my early 20s, and living that life, you know, of for the now and for myself. And I had learned, this is kind of my first foundational bit of knowledge that laid for where I am today, but you know, I knew a lot about DMT, dimethyltryptamine, and the realm scene in those places. We discussed psychedelics last time we were on. You know, I'm not a stranger to that experience, to those experiences, and what it entails, and many other things as well. And I kind of understood the culture quite well, and I would read trip reports and study it, you know, and listen to all the famous talking heads on the matter. And I understood that in that realm, people encounter jesters. So that was already a foundational understanding that I already had from early on, before I was even awake or born again or a Christian or even studying anything to do with biblical history, let alone the Nephilim, you know. But I understood people see these things. And I was very much like a Jungian, scientifically minded, symbolic, everything psychological type back then. And yeah, I was going off archetypes. They represent an aspect of the collective consciousness, the shadow of humanity, in order to teach us about ourselves and transcend the dark aspects of our own inner psyche, you know. And I had that kind of interpretation of what the jester really was. And you look at what a jester is throughout history, it's this playful character that pokes fun at the king, and you know, we are the king of our own realities, and it's their job to break down those barriers by mocking us and ridiculing us and poking our sensibilities and ego. And I very much just left it at that. That was good enough as an explanation for me back then, you know. But then when I became a conspiracy theorist or a truther or whatever you want to call that label, you know, I'm not looking to die-cast myself. I'm still just an individual, a person who just thinks, you know, at the end of the day. But when I woke up, it was the end of the world. The Mayan calendar was about to end in 2012, and the build up to that really got me spiraling into all the warrens and the rabbit holes of conspiracy, you know. And I very much realized very quickly the New Age religion was for the New World Order. It was very much a part of the conspiracy, and I was snapping out of a few of my ideologies, and I was leaning towards Christianity, and I didn't want to go there. I didn't want to go to Christianity. I thought it was a stupid idea at first, and in no way can they have all the answers. But by 2014, over a long, arduous period of breaking down and finding no answers in the psychedelic world and in those Eastern philosophies, I broke down and asked God to show me the truth, and he did. And I was born again that day in March of 2014. And I from that day, you know, I really buckled down and got to grips with biblical history and started looking into Christian contrarians and researchers out there at the time. It was a bit of a wild west of conspiracy back then, and there were some big names knocking about, like Michael Heiser, Rob Skiba, you had Gary Wayne, and there was many, L.A. Marzulli, you know, all those conspiratorial types that were discussing the Nephilim and these giant skulls and the elongated skulls, you know, the Paracas skulls and all these type of things. And I was just enthralled. I was like, this is incredible. This explains so much, you know, and it makes the Bible come alive. Finally, I understand the history of why there was a flood, what happened in the antediluvian age, why God chose a people. Kind of all that narrative was becoming clear as day to me. But I also, naive to the rules of Christianity, I didn't realize that's actually heretical, anathema, extra biblical nonsense according to a lot of the churchianity types, you know. So I learned that as I went. But for me, as somebody who wasn't raised in a church with any particular dogma, it works, it makes sense. I think it's real, I think it's true, and I think they were onto something. And it finally answers the hard questions of why a flood, why would a loving God do such a thing, you know, and why all the genocide in the early parts of the Bible, you know, why the wiping out of the women and the children and the animals and all the rest of it. Like, what's the point, you know, when you contextualize it with genetic corruption and giants and a rebellion of the angels, yeah, it suddenly starts to make a hell of a lot more sense, you know. So for me, it worked. It helped suddenly strengthen my faith. And as I was going through that transition period from 2014 to 2016, it was a rough time in my life because I was just born again, but I was a baby Christian. I didn't really know much, and I'd lived a relatively naive life up until that point about spiritual warfare. But once I gave myself to Christ, that's when I was really getting heavily spiritually attacked. And my eyes were open. We're in a spiritual war and the demons are real. And I need to know what they are and where they come from, because that's just the type of guy I am, you know? So that's why I when I researched the Nephilim, I explained it very quickly. And it saved my life in many ways. But, you know, I had some experiences after being born again. I went to the DMT realm in a flashback. I was sober for a year by this point, so I wasn't doing drugs, but I went back to the DMT realm randomly and saw a giant jester for the first time. And it was this black and white striped, big, wide-lipped, purple-lipped, big, huge glowing eyes looking down at me. It was a giant, you know, I was looking up at it, and it had these huge horn-like protrusions coming from its skull, like a jester's cap, but its physiology was this shape. It wasn't wearing a jester's costume. Its skin was that color, you know what I mean? It was a sight to behold. It shocked me a lot. I didn't know what to do with that at the time because I came back to reality, you know, and with this vision in my mind, I'm like, I don't know what that was. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that. That was just, I understood about the DMT realm and the jesters by this point, so I was like, I've seen one for the first time, so I know they're real now. They are there. And I was getting visitations from the Hat Man. I was getting sleep paralysis, strangulation, things like this, wrenching myself awake, screaming every other night, you know. And I had another moment where I went paralyzed I was dog sitting at the time at my parents' house, and I went paralyzed on the sofa, collapsed, and darkness started to just seep in from the corners of my eyes. The room was crunching away into like a spiraled portal in front of me, and I was dying. It felt like I was dying. It felt like my soul was being torn from my body, and that was the end of me. Maybe I was having a brain aneurysm or something. I don't know what was going on, but it was bad. It was a bad moment, and all I could think to do was say, Jesus, help me, as quietly and as croaky as I possibly could in my paralyzed state, and instantly it stopped like that, you know. And I was back in the room, covered in sweat. I got up. I was like, bile coming out. It was horrible. It was a bad time, you know what I mean? It was like a wrenching moment, but I lived, I survived, and I knew that was for me like the final pin in the understanding of the power of Christ and his name, and the use it is when it comes to spiritual warfare and demonic attacks, and all of it was real to me then. I can't deny it. I've lived it. It's an experience. I can't prove to you that happened to me. Absolutely, I understand it sounds like the ramblings of a madman, but I don't care. That's what happened to me, and that's the truth, and I can't lie about it. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to keep saying that because I'm a bad liar. That's what happened to me. You know, so with all these experiences kind of lined up and this biblical history knowledge kind of backing up, I was watching lots of presentations about the Nephilim, you know, and I understood that demons are the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim. That's kind of the basic thing you learn. Demons aren't angels. They are the children of angels mixed with humans, specifically. And when they die, they're stuck on Earth, and we call them demons today. So I was finally understanding my enemy. What was attacking me? What was coming at me? What are these things? What are these entities people see? And why clown-like, why jester-like? So I did a cursory search, and I found one video when I typed in the words Nephilim Clown on YouTube, and it was by a channel called The Epic Conspiracy. His logo was like an eye, Illuminati eye from Egypt or something like that. He had like 200 subscribers, and he made like a mockumentary History Channel style video mocking Christians and people who believe in the Nephilim. So he wasn't even making a real Nephilim video. He was just taking the piss out of us, having a laugh at us, you know, like these crazy people believe in giants. But as he's describing the way giants looked and the stereotypical red hair, white skin, and then he said there's only one explanation: they're interdimensional killer clowns from out of space. And he showed the 80s movie images, you know, and he was just joking. He didn't care. He didn't know what he was on about, you know. He was just laughing at us. But I knew, like, actually there's something to this then. Nephilim and clown. There's something here. There's something to do with this. I don't know what it is exactly yet in this moment, but I'm going to dig and see what I can find, basically. And here I am 9 years later. The series was started in 2016, and I have a book published now, writing the second one, and it just keeps coming. And it turns out, not only are clowns as we know them today a creation of copies, shall we say, of Rakshasa demons of India, brought to Britain in the early 1800s by the son of a famous Freemason of the time, who was heavily interlinked with India and family was connected to India, who brought that iconography onto the British stage and modelled the modern clown after demons of India. But even prior to that, within the same plays, the same pantomime, Harlequin was originally introduced in the 1600s as a model of European demons called the Wild Man. So the first proto-clown as we understand it today and the modern clown as we know it today are both modelled after demons. There's no two ways about it. That's exactly what it is. And it's for good reason, because that character was supposed to be that in the original plays. So that's one thing. And then if you look outside of the history of the clown costume, and I looked at all these cultures all over the earth who basically have many different types of religions. I'm not die-casting them all as just the same religion necessarily. So you have more ancestor spirit worship, nature worship religions. You've got monotheistic, pantheistic gods and worship systems as well. Then you also have more shamanistic cultures, which often sometimes have one god or have many gods or nature gods within them. You get these apotropaic cultures that believe you dress like spirits to scare them away. Then you have other ones who wear costumes to bring the demons into their bodies. But if you separate the minutiae details of the religions and just look at the aesthetics of the costumes worn to represent spirits and or demons in these individual cultures of varying religions and beliefs on every continent, you start to see a pattern emerge. Multicolored, patterned, shimmering, stringed clothing, like a clown costume, as we would archetypically caricature in the West today. Pale white faces, white face makeup, chalk paint on the skin, multicolored patterns drawn on top of that white paint on the face or on the arms or on the legs. A huge multicolored headdress made of feathers or sequins or beads or diamonds and jewels, but it's usually red, primarily sometimes gold, but always red. So a red headdress, white face, multicolored pattern clothing. Some cultures even use stilts while walking around in Africa, for example, to represent the ancestor spirits, or some of them do rock art paintings of the ancient spirit deities to venerate them. And if you just follow the themes, they all have clown aesthetical features. And it's because the costume is used as a tool to channel the entities on the other side in the spirit realm. And you dress like the thing to channel the thing, to create a portal to the thing. And many cultures do it to make deals with them and to allow them into their own body. That's like a portal. I'm representing you in the spirit realm, so you can enter into me in the physical. For stuff, for power, usually, the ability not to bleed when cut, or to have the strength of 10 men, or if you're in small tribal warfare situations, that's a benefit. It's a huge benefit, But then in the West, what we've done, and it seems like when I said this costume was introduced in the 1800s and then popularized into the modern day, we have our own version of this costume worn by all these other cultures, and we call it a clown. To us, it's a cult. It's esoteric. Esoterically, it represents the Nephilim. Exoterically, to the public, it's just a bit of fun for the kids. You're not supposed to know what it's really for. And like I said, that's all the theory in a nutshell. And I said the explorations go into every culture on the earth, pretty much all the history of the Bible. I think all human history is biblical history. Even the cultures that aren't in the Bible still exist on the earth and still experience the same history as dictated in the Bible. There was a time where the offspring of fallen angels mixing with human women created giants that became predators that killed and ate us and then dominated us and became the kings and rulers of an antediluvian age. And every single culture remembers them. And every single culture either venerates them, fears them, or hates them. But either way, they have artwork and clothing to represent them, and they all look like clowns. So that's basically the work in a nutshell. It's an anthropological study more than anything. I know what it sounds like on the surface. The Bible does not explicitly say And so the clown-looking giants came down and ate. It doesn't say stuff that I understand, but when you get context from outside of the biblical text, you start to see what the Bible was talking about. Because the Bible doesn't care about looks; it cares about actions. If you want to find out what these things looked like, you have to look outside and look at these other cultures, and they're telling you explicitly. And as a result, I don't think we should take what we wear lightly. As a result of my own research, take it for what it is, ridicule it, mock it, laugh at it like most people do. But when you actually look at the work I've done, I think I can make a very strong, compelling case that I'm not just talking complete and total nonsense. So, yeah, there we go.
Well, it sounds like you take a path of anthropology, theology, mythology, a whole bunch of different things. And I actually think that that's the way to do it, because a lot of times people will just look at it from a theological point of view and not from a oral tradition or any other kind of a cultural tradition from around the world. But it's pretty clear to me as well, and especially after hearing you talk about it on many other shows and your book, that this is what they are. It's funny because you mentioned killer clowns from outer space. Yeah. And that jarred something in your mind. And to me, the space part too actually makes me think a little bit deeper, because I like to go into the metaphysical of where are they coming from? It seems like everybody always stops at the physical, where they came in through portals or they came in through manifestations or shed their Okatarian or whatever, what have you. But I want to know where they're coming from. Where do they reside right now? And have you ever looked into anything like that? Have you ever looked into the metaphysical of what is known?
Well, where do they reside as disembodied spirits right now?
To me, there's a few different places, but
there could be. Me and Gary Wayne talked about this. Huge inspiration for the book, and then I was blessed to get to have many conversations with him over the years. I even thank him at the end of the book for the advice he gave me on writing the book, But when we talk about it, he has explained the whole Okatarian concept to me, and he thinks there might be pocket dimensions for specific tribes of Nephilim, and their fathers, their angels, have created for their children realms they can reside in for them specifically, So Valhalla might be a good example of this. It's one specific realm, not for people, humans, but it was for the Nephilim to reside, and maybe they can in some way come back into and fro within our realm through these portals from these pocket dimensions. I have heard that before, which is an interesting take on it, and I'm always willing to be open to that being a possibility. I'm not totally sure, but that would imply that they were still physical but were saved from the death and destruction that came upon them as a judgment by being put into these pocket dimensions. So it might explain where the physical giants came back into the earth again once, because not all of them, it seemed, had that blessing. The Bible talks about many of them killing each other in brutal, horrible, bloody battles in the book of Enoch, and the angels had to watch their children kill each other. So we know many of them didn't make it into a pocket dimension and just died, Perhaps even became the mountainscapes we see around us and the hills we see around us today, and we're just living on the ruins and the corpses of a titanochemy as described in Greek mythology, just giants slaying each other everywhere. But either way, some of them may have kept their Okatera, their body, and been kept safe in pocket dimensions designed specifically for them by powerful creator entities like angels, maybe. Or it seems they're stuck on the earth in a disembodied form. So I think the earth is both physical and spiritual simultaneously. I don't think there actually is a disconnect from the spiritual realm and the physical realm. I think they're both the exact same creation. Like a coin has two sides, or a rug has the warp and the woof, the side you're supposed to see, and then the messy side underneath where all the strings connect to make the pattern on top. I think it's one item, the spiritual realm and the physical realm. They're not you can't separate the two. You can't have one without the other. In the same with us as physical entities, I think we are physical beings, but we are also living souls. We are a spiritual being. With a physical aspect to us, but we're both simultaneously, And I think when the Nephilim died physically, the body may have gone, but they were earthbound. They don't have a soul breathed into them from God Himself, that breath of life. The earthly entities, and they'll remain on the earth in spiritual form. And I think these spirits, these unclean spirits, that Christ, a lot of His ministry involved casting out of people, are the disembodied spirits of those Nephilim, and they're right here on Earth with us, just beyond our perception, but they're still here. Like, they didn't go anywhere, and they can interact with us loosely, but in a disembodied state, they're limited in their ability to influence us. And I think when you take psychedelics, all they do is just tune up the dial on your perception, and suddenly you start to see more of what's actually here. You're not hallucinating things that aren't there. You're just seeing things that are here now, which we don't ordinarily perceive on a daily basis. And I've also theorized, just throwing this out there, when the flood happened, God set a rainbow in the sky for Noah as a covenant, as a promise that he would never flood the earth again. But that implies that rainbows never existed before that in some way. It was like a shock surprise that this thing suddenly existed called a rainbow now as like a sign. Well, if you understand that our limited bandwidth for vision is that coloured spectrum, perhaps that's what happened after the flood. Perhaps our perceptions were limited as a mercy, because otherwise we would be still communicating with and seeing and being influenced by these spirits that now infect the earth everywhere. I think it's why God calls for a new creation as well at the end, a renewing of the heavens and earth, and them becoming one, and the old world kind of being burned away by fire in a way for a cleansing renewal moment, because I think it's currently full of parasites we call demons, that and they are quite literally parasites. They live off us as a food source. So Christ describes them as wandering in dry places, seeking a home, and they'll take your body if you let them, and they'll live within you, your vessel, if you allow them. And while they're there, don't forget these things used to be kings, rulers, giants among puny humans. Well, they'll use you. And what they'll do is influence you to do stuff, drink things, sin, and in extreme cases even kill, but they'll make you believe you came up with the idea or you wanted to do those things. And then they'll experience or feel that pleasure or that thing, those emotions, vicariously through your body. As you feel and taste stuff, so do they. And that's kind of the demon's game today. That's what they're doing, and they parasitically feed off of us through doing stuff like that. Now, look, we sin. Humans have the capacity to sin. I'm not abdicating our responsibility to demons. That's not what I'm doing here. But they can certainly influence us. And if you are demonized, I don't want to say possessed necessarily, but if you are infested with demons, then yeah, you're going to be influenced. They'll be continuously influencing you to make bad decisions and do things, and they'll be making noises in your head you think are your own thoughts. So you believe you came up with the ideas and want to do these things, all the while feeling shame and guilt and misery and horrible. Yeah, because that's what they do. They use you and then they move on once you're dead. Basically, they don't care about you. They're not your friends, and that's exactly how parasites work. They can't help but kill the host body in the end. It's just the way they are. It's in their nature, But ideally, they'd like to remain hidden. They don't want you to know that they're in there. And they can be cast out in the name of Jesus Christ. And once the Holy Spirit's in there, there's no room for them anymore, and they can't use you. And that's when you get attacked, usually by other people who do have demons, don't really realize it, and it's kind of they use other means to get to you, and that's when you get oppressed by demons rather than possessed by demons, so it's like a bait and switch. But this is the spiritual war we're in. I think they're here on earth with us. I think that's how they operate, that's how they work. I think that's their modus operandi today, and I think they are working as spiritual foot soldiers for their fathers in the heavenly realms, the Ephesians 6:12 stuff, the principalities in high places, a spiritual wickedness in high places. And I think they do the bidding of their fathers. And I think their fathers answer to the leader of their rebellion, which is Lucifer or Satan, the dragon. And I think in the physical realm, they have their own physical foot soldiers that they communicate with that are a step below the demons, which are the secret societies. And they're all working in tandem as a hierarchy system, spiritual and physical, to subjugate, control, and dictate mankind's future towards their golden age, their new world order, and it's... In the long run, I think it's also an effort or a promise that they can get their bodies back. And perhaps I've also theorized that might be what transhumanism is really all about, and robotics and the rest of it, and the singularity. It's not about reaching an apex moment where we get to live forever. It's about creating vessels that can house consciousness, which there's an army of disembodied consciousnesses or consciousness. I don't know what the plural for that is, but there's an army of them just waiting for vessels to inhabit, and we're going to build it for them. But right now, they get into us. They use our bodies. And like I said, there are many cultures around the earth who know this. It's not even a secret. They venerate them or fear them, but either way, they dress like them to let them into their own bodies, because it's kind of in those cultures, they want the demon in them. It gives them power. It's like a familiar. It gives them strength, but it's a transactional deal. It's a contract. Okay, I'll give you power, but you need to sacrifice. You need to eat things or smoke things or drink things or do things that I want you to do, because I want to feel those pleasures again. That's how the demon thinks. And the person's like, deal. I'll drink that blood or kill that person or rape that person or drink that alcohol or do that drug or eat that food you like, so long as you give me X, Y, and Z, money, fame, power, gold, riches, whatever, and you work for me and I'll work for you. And it's a symbiotic relationship then between parasite and human. It's true venom stuff, you know what I mean? It's like that, and I think there's many ways this works. So people who know what they're doing make contracts with them. Ignorant people who don't know that they're infested tend to remain ignorant of that fact till it's too late. And then we as Christians who take all authority, we can cast these things out, send them back to the dry places, and we have all authority over them, and they are a defeated, weak enemy. But in these cultures who don't have Christianity, in these tribes, they're not afraid of being out in the open because no one's going to cast them out any second or any moment from now. But in the West, if they were so brash and open about it like they were in these other cultures, then some Christians somewhere will notice eventually and probably do something about it. So they tend to keep it hidden, you know. And so I think that's why they invented the clown costume, to be honest. I think the purpose was to create something that they could use publicly to channel entities for their own benefit and gain. However, the public won't know that that's what's happening. It's hidden from them, and they'll think it's something fun and interesting just for the kids. I think this is why Shriners International, for example, has a clown sect within every single one of them. What does a Muslim order, themed Arabic order, have to do with Western clowns? It's completely devoid of all sense until you realize a step above that, by invitation only, Shriners in good standing can be invited to become members of the Royal Order of the Jester, which again, a very exclusive club. And I talk about them in the book, but they've been involved in some really shady things, and you can gather that just by looking at the public records and the FBI records that are available publicly. God only knows what they've done secretly that hasn't been revealed, but what they've done publicly is heinous. What they've been caught doing is heinous, you know. What's on record is heinous, and I've just shown what's on record, you know. And it's why is the highest order of Freemasonry, from Freemasonry to shrining to jesters, a jester? Why is that the best thing to be? You know, why is that the highest privilege? And it's not because it represents having the ear of the king, which again is just although that did happen in the past, symbolically I think we are on par with or a step above humanity, and we're with the jesters and the demons in the other realm. I think they know about them, and I think that's why maybe there's been this push the last decade to get people to take DMT and talk with the jesters, you know what I mean? It's kind of, I think that's why they look like jesters. I think that's what these people are encountering when they go to the other side. I think they look more jester-like in spiritual form, but in physical form, they were more dragon-human hybrid-like, you know, which explains the wide mouth, like a serpent's jaw, the big eyes, the fangs often stuck out, the thin, long, big red lips. Because a lizard with lips would look pretty damn weird, and I think that's why they have these big red smiles, you know. And you've got wild, crazy, flaming red hair, auras beaming off of them, scaly, perhaps odd-looking porcelain white skin, human-shaped body, but with like claws, and it would just look like a real crazy psychedelic mess. Because lizards are very colourful, reptiles are colourful creatures, and I think we got a bit confused in the past with the early Nephilim research. You always saw these presentations, and Rob Skeeb would be there showing like the giants all lined up next to each other, and it was just a copy paste of Conan the Barbarian with these huge pectoral muscles and a tanned body with a loincloth on, you know what I mean? And he had like a club over his shoulder and big shaggy beard with brown hair. It's like, that's too human. That's not what these things would have looked like at all. And this is where my creative aspect came into it in the original thing. It's like, well, what would happen if you got a seraphim angel mixing with a human woman? You would get a psychedelic mess. You would get something absolutely terrifying. And when we know what dragons looked like, because you can go and look at cultures in China, let's say. And so that surrounding region in Asia, you know, the Thailand temples and the Japanese dragons and the Chinese dragons and the Philippine dragons and whatever, just that whole region, you know what I mean? If you look at the way the dragons looked, they were extremely psychedelically colorful and wild looking. Then you go across to like the continents of, let's say, you know, North America or South America and you know, the Mesoamerican region. And they all have dragons there, Quetzalcoatl being one of them, for example, but they're very colourful, very psychedelic, feathered and plumed as well, so angelic reptilian hybrid mixed. And these are the things that were interacting with the people on a regular basis. So these were more likely the Watchers we're dealing with. And these are the ones that did what they did and created the Nephilim. So I think a seraphim hybridized human monster looking thing would look weird. And I can attest from the images I've found and the research I've done, yeah, the offspring looked like clowns. So it just kept coming back to this concept over and over again. So anyway, sorry for the long-winded answer for a lot. I said a lot there, but when I get going, I can really get going with this one. So I apologize.
No, I love it, and I gotta learn how to shut my mouth sometimes too. So because I will jump in like as I start running my mouth and try to interject my ideas. But you mentioned earlier that you mentioned a dial. So in that we are in this visible spectrum, which is what I think as well, that kind of God keeps us in this realm where we can't see beyond us. Do you think that they're a frequency and that they use medium, which is where we get the word media from, to channel that bandwidth from person to person? It's almost like the movie Fallen. Have you seen the movie Fallen with Denzel Washington?
I've not actually. No. Sorry.
So it's that's all right. So it's like Denzel Washington's a cop and he's trying to figure out a murder, and he comes encounter with Azazel. Azazel just keeps changing form. Whatever it is, keeps changing from woman to man to dog to cat, whatever. And then it can't really be killed. It can only be transferred from one thing to another, like an energy, like a frequency. And that's where I kind of get that thought from, that like maybe they're broadcasting their spells through the media, through that medium, to channel these entities directly into our brains through pornography and TV and movies and all this other stuff. Because I mean, that is where we get the idea of what we just mentioned, killer clowns from outer space and things like that. We get these ideas from somewhere, and it seems like that they relish in the idea that Halloween's coming up, for example, and they're selling all these clown things and clown costumes and all this other stuff, you know. And,
absolutely.
It also to me I think that they sort of stoke fear. I mean, obviously their appearance, historically in our DNA, we're like afraid of them because of the fear that they used to induce on people so long ago when they were in that form. And then the women wear makeup and all this stuff, and they like tall men. You know, there's a lot of like historical things in DNA of women as well that want to go after somebody like that, right? So I guess what I'm trying to say is, are they using things like fear to, because like if they constantly have stuff in the media, like I said, with movies and all this stuff, they use that fear and then it gives us a low vibration and they can sort of attach themselves onto us in some way.
In many ways, yeah. I mean, we understand through things like MK Ultra, you know, that if you torture somebody enough, you can break them down and then rebuild them and reprogram them, for example. So we know even you know, never mind like unknown horrors from beyond the void, man-made horrors that are well understood can be just equally as terrifying. You know, what we're capable of, we understand the mind is fragile. And can be broken and therefore manipulated. And I think the demons know this too. Yes, I think they do use things like fear to break you down emotionally to breaking point. And when you're in that low, weak vibrational state, as you describe it, yeah, I think that could open you up to being more readily demonized, shall we say, and influenced. And it's sad because if we only knew your true authority over these things, that you are a king over them in a sense, and Jesus Christ has given you all authority to trample on serpents and snakes and scorpions, you know, and it's like these things are nothing but snakes scorpions, you know, and then they
can I pause you right here can I interrupt you for something? Dude, I got a don't tread on me thing behind me. You can see it. So don't tread on me flag. But just recently I have come to the idea like, wait a minute, that's a snake, and it's saying,
Yeah.
"Don't tread on me." And like Jesus gave the authority for us to trample on snakes. So what am I saying here? Whenever I support the Gadsden flag, am I saying that? Like, am I telling Christians to don't tread on me? I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me. So now I'm like, maybe I need to remove all of this iconography of like the don't tread on me, because it's sort of a rebellion symbol, at least in the South and in Southern culture, or like not just the South, but in patriotic culture in the United States. So it feels like even that's inverted, which is a weird. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I mentioned that to Demon
maybe.
Erasers the other day.
Maybe. I know what Brian would say. It's demons, bro. Get out your house. You're bringing demons into your house. You know, is that what he said? Yeah, I imagine. You know,
Similar, yeah.
something like that. And I get it. You know, you do have to be careful, but at the same time, I'm not afraid of symbols and shapes. I'm not. You know, I'm not. That's ridiculous, you know. And at the end of the day, I understand the intention behind that symbology that they were using. You know, we're more dangerous than they think we are. You know what I mean? They can't take away. If we can fight back, it's that attitude of, you know, the government's not going to do what it's going to do to us, so we can easily fight back. You know, don't tread on me, don't take away my rights attitude. So I think the people who probably made that, I don't know the history, but I assume they were probably ignorant of any ill biblically referenced intentions. I really doubt it. You know? And again, I think most people don't think like that, or like what we're talking about here when they make these things. There could be some spiritual influence, maybe. You know, I'm not denying that that's a possibility. Perhaps, you know, but I wouldn't worry too much about it. But when in terms of like the whole, do they influence us and put us into use fear to make us weaker and more easily malleable to their agenda? Absolutely. And I think it's happening on a mass scale. I think mass trauma events and rituals are taking place in the media all the time, to get the whole nations and the earth reeling over things and feeling powerless and hopeless, and that only makes us more controllable and perhaps in a spiritual sense more easily manipulated and useful as a food source for demons, spiritually speaking. You know, I think that could be possible. But then we also do know that they do use clown imagery in the media to glorify it in some way, to make people dress like it for something like Halloween. So they popularize it quite a lot. So you'll find there's a lot of media out there that there's a lot of killer clown films out there. It's a bit of a trope, you know. There's a lot of that, but you find there's popular ones that always get rehashed every so often. So there's always a new It reboot. First the book, then the movie in the 90s, the series in the 90s, and then the movie remake in the modern era, you know, 2016 onwards to now. So there's always going to be a new It rendition in the future. I can guarantee that. And It is quite literally an interdimensional, fear-feeding monster whose main form is a clown in the physical, but also in the spiritual. It's like a spider hybrid creature in some way, you know. But then if you go to like the comic book series Spawn, the Violator, which is a member of Hell who's sent to watch over Spawn, making sure he's doing his job on behalf of Hell. But his form is like a lizard reptilian spider demon monster, but he's a clown in physical form, you know. And it's kind of they always reference it in media quite a lot. I think there's a lot of people in media who know about what I'm talking about here and use it in fictionalized settings in order to gain the power, or at least make people inspired to want to think it's good or cool. There's always a new Joker every so often. There's always going to be a new rendition of the Joker, and he's getting more and more of the anti-hero, personable, relatable type as time goes on, rather than an insane lunatic who's out there killing people. Now he's maybe he's got a point with like Heath Ledger's version, and then with Joaquin Phoenix's version, it's like, I am the Joker, we are the Joker, we're all the Joker, you know, let's watch it burn, society is against us, you know. It's sympathy for the devil stuff, you know, and I think a lot of people then are inspired to mimic it. Events like Halloween, and that's perfect, because Samhain is when the veil is thinnest between the physical and the spiritual realm in the Celtic tradition, you know. Yeah, and true. If they can get a lot of people during this time period to dress like clowns, then what did I tell you these other cultures do? They dress like the thing to channel the thing. And I don't think ignorance of the spiritual law will make you immune to it, unfortunately. I think if you go around dressing like this, you are opening up a portal to the spiritual realm, and you're mirroring something that really does exist in that space, and you're giving it permission to enter into your body. And I think that's what these rituals are every year, and we should be extremely careful about what we do. But never mind that. There are people in culture using it for power as well. So I think if you look at the music industry, it's a perfect example where people dress like psychedelic clown demons all the time, and they get really rich and famous and powerful, and everyone loves them, and they become idols that people worship, which in turn makes more people look up to them, dress like them, copy them, because that's what it takes to be famous in the industry. Chappell Roan is a new famous addition, but she's just playing the same game that's been happening for years. David Bowie did it too with his Iggy Stardust character, and Lady Gaga played that game as well. But if you look at if you look just through the whole 80s era, they were all doing it. Look at Kiss. You know what I mean? It's the same thing, like white makeup, patterned skin, red lips. You know, you do that, you end up channeling demons. That's basically what happens. You know, he even had the tongue sticking out, Gene Simmons primarily, and that is a common theme whenever you see Nephilim represented in ancient artwork. The Gorgon, for example, is a prime example of this from Greek culture. The Gorgon, Medusa, as she's more popularly known, but there was 3 sisters in the Greek original myths, is the offspring of Echidna and Typhon. Typhon is a sea serpent's god, so a dragon of the sea, mixing with a siren, a human woman who became a snake lady. So and those two had children, and the Gorgons were those things, and they are Nephilim, quintessential Nephilim. And if you look at the old reliefs and the old paintings on pottery and the artwork representing the Gorgon, it's big wide grin, tongue sticking out, sharp fangs, massive crazy bulging eyes, red dreadlocks, so red hair, you know, and white skin. And then if you see the body, it's human in proportion, so it doesn't have snake legs or anything. But it's holding a horse under its arm, like a puppy, like a chihuahua. So it's a giant, and it has wings, like an angel. So it's half angel, you know. So they're telling you clearly what the Nephilim look like, and the tongue sticking out is usually always incorporated in there for some reason. I don't know why, you know. So when you see that happening, and someone like Gene Simmons in the band Kiss with the white makeup on, doing these things, well, they're mirroring something in the spirit realm and channeling it, and you find they usually end up as legends. Legends of rock, going down in the annals of history for eternity, for future generations to venerate as fallen gods that will live on forever in our memories. You know, they get idolized, they get turned into, you know, saints of Satanism, basically, in some way. Like people realize, you know, saints of the modern secular culture or something. But make no mistake, that's done by design. It's not like they were chosen because they were good musicians. They were chosen because they chose to dress like that by the people who run the industry. And that's the real secret to be famous, I've realized. It's not having talent or having being a little bit weird. Just dress like a clown and they will choose you. They will put the spotlight on you. They'll make you famous because they want people out there to be idolized who choose to dress this way. So more people copy them, emulate them. Then you get more channels opened up, more people bringing more vessel of demons into our realm. It's actually just an endless cycle, and the whole media industry is dedicated to doing that. You'll find. Now I've mentioned it, just look at history, and you'll realize some of the most famous artists throughout musical history have clown features, and that's done by design. It's not because they were actually great musicians. It has nothing to do with that. It's because the people who run the industry know full well what that imagery represents. They know. And some musicians, I think, know what they're doing. Others are just ignorant. And they just think that's what you're supposed to do to be famous, you know? So they go out there and do the thing that the idol did. And then they're useful idiots. Low intelligent people who just get a lot of money and think they're great narcissists, you know, and never think anything deep about anything. A lot of the industry is just full of those people, you know. But I think there are some high players in there, warlocks and witches in the industry, who do it on purpose, and they know what they're doing. They know why they're dressing that way. And they use it to gain influence, power, fame, money, strength, and the rest of it. And they make their sacrifices just like these ancestor spirit worship cultures all over the earth and every continent, in isolated tribes and places all over the earth. It's the same practice. It's the same method. There's just a Western way of doing it. And then there's these other cultures' way of doing it. You need to deal solely with aesthetics here. A lot of people get too wrapped up in their own individual cultures, thinking theirs is special and their stories are unique. And that's not what that is. If you look at the whole mythology against that particular entity in my particular religion, it's this whole rich mythos, you know, about a battle and everything. So yeah, that's your isolated region's story to explain them. That's what you were told by them when they were here, what they were. Those are the lies that every culture has to explain what these entities are. But if you just stick to the aesthetics, strip away the narratives that are made around them, they're all the same. That's because that's what happened. The whole earth was dominated by these things. Fallen angels, watchers, 200 of them came down, and I think they split themselves up into sets of gods with a small g. And I think they set up their pantheons all over the earth over different regions. And I think they were worshipped as gods in many areas. The Norse had their pantheon. The Egyptians had their pantheons. The Indic regions had their pantheons of gods. The North Americas and the South Americas had their own pantheons of gods. And they're not all talking about the same angels. They're talking about sets of 9 of the 200 originals, who came down, all doing their own thing, all working together for the same agenda. And they all came down and mated with the humans and created offspring. And they all have their own myths and legends for each region that are wholly unique to those regions. And they have their own aesthetical ways of describing it and their own artwork styles to depict them with their own, whatever resources they have in their region is how you find their aesthetical differences appear. But if you break it down to just the archetypical similarities, it's always the same. Always the same story, always the same visage. And that's how we can know that the Bible is true. What it said happened really did happen. But everyone's so in their own cultures, they think their stories are unique and special to them alone. They've made sacred cows out of them. When I come along saying, no, it's not that special. They're like, who's this white guy out there, this colonialist out there spitting on my tradition? It's like, no. I'm spitting on all traditions, including the Celtic traditions. They're all the same. This is not about race. This is not about specialized cultures. This is just simply about the truth of human history that I'm talking about here. Don't take it personally. Don't take it personally. You need to learn to separate yourself from these stories. And I think the Bible contextualizes it in a way that transcends all of it. I think it really puts it in its place, and we can finally know who we are and where we come from and what's going on when you take biblical history into account to explain where these creatures came from in every culture's mythologies. That's why the first half of my book, the first 10 chapters, is just biblical history. It's like an abridged version of the whole thing to get the foundation laid. So when I start going on about my theory, you understand what context I'm coming at this from, and I think it's true. I think it's all true. Like the Bible is 100% real human history from start to finish, including the Book of Enoch. I think it is. So I went off of one thing. I'm sorry. I do that. I went off again. I'm back. It's your turn. Go.
No, it's totally fine, man. I really enjoy you talking, and actually, the less I talk, the better, because I don't think people listen for me. I think people listen to hear the guest talk. So, yeah, when you were talking about how the celebrities and all this stuff dress up in makeup, I think they call it peacocking, which is interesting because it ties into that feathered serpent kind of an idea with the feathers spanned out as well. But I had a friend, man, who, funny enough, he grew up in the same town where the Bishopville Lizard Man is in South Carolina, here in the United States. And he told me that he had an interaction with this entity one time that was very colorful. And he's like, I don't really know how to describe it. It was, he was describing it as a coat, and it had like lots of feathers and colors on it and stuff like that. So again, that kind of goes back to that idea of what you were saying, how when people would see this manifestation of, the seraphim mixing with the humans, it would have some kind of a crazy look to it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But doesn't the intent matter too? I mean, because a lot of this stuff, if people believe that they are worshiping a good entity, like I mean that from a completely, like, I believe what you're saying about the Bible as well. I believe in that same concept and that same idea. But if people are looking at this from their culture and be like, no, that's good, and we do good behind it, doesn't the intent matter there as well? I feel like the intent can give breath to something, whether it's negative, because I say a lot of bad words, right? Whenever I say bad words, they aren't typical. Like, I'm not using them to hurt someone. I'm just using them as an expression of something. So doesn't intent matter at some point too? Like, if you're dressing up as a clown just to be a clown at a kid's birthday party, you wouldn't necessarily be channeling some kind of a demonic entity intentionally. So it would be like you have to invite them in, almost like the vampires at the door kind of a thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, and this is something I've struggled to answer, to be honest, because it's a bit of this and a bit of that. It seems I think there's plenty of examples where people are ignorantly dressing like clowns, and there's consequences that happen that they would never probably connect. Maybe the death of Heath Ledger could be a good example of this. You know, he put on the skin of a Nephilim and fully embodied the Joker and everything it stood for. And he clearly, everyone says he basically went insane, you know, and obviously he died of a drug overdose and the rest of it. And there's lots of stories behind how that happened. It's a tragedy, but there's no doubt it affected his psyche in a big way. Absolutely no doubt whatsoever. You read his diary. His father released his diary recently when he was playing that role, and the scribblings in there are the ramblings of the insane, you know, and he's clearly so into it that it affected him in a big way. So I think ignorance or not, like I'm starting to think it really doesn't matter what your intentions are. You know, the road to hell is paved with them. All the good intentions. And I think there's sometimes as Christians we don't like to do this because it seems a little bit, you know, rough, but we have to draw the line somewhere, and we can't all be right, unfortunately. And just because you mean well when you celebrate the Day of the Dead, let's say in Mexico or something, you know, or you mean well when you take part in that ancient traditional ritual that your village has always done for thousands of years, it's kind of like, well, I don't think that matters to the demons. I really don't think they care what your intentions are. I think the physical and the spiritual world are so intimately connected that when you dress like something, it's tacit agreement whether you like it or not, or know it or not. You're mirroring something, and you're making it easier for them to get into you. And I know people don't want to hear this, but I really don't think your intentions matter. I really don't. All the evidence is telling me no, it doesn't. Because you have this other issue. It's kind of like some cultures, well, we dress this way to scare the spirits away. It's kind of like, I'm wearing this to symbolize that, like, a demon already owns this place. So when another demon turns up and sees me dressed like this, it thinks, there's already a demon here. I can't do this. So they flee from the region. It's kind of like, this is their domain. I need to go find somewhere where there's no dominion yet. So we're tricking the demons into staying away from us, into not ruining our rituals and our sacred spaces. We dress like the demons as like a protection talisman to ward them off, you know. And that's apotropaic cultures that believe that's what they're doing. But then you get these other cultures like the Theyyam in India, which is ancient tradition, which people say even predates Hinduism itself, you know. And they dress in this wild, crazy, demonic-looking visage, colourful orange makeup, rosy red cheeks, red nose, massive fangs sticking up here, wild eyes painted on, you know, massive elaborate headdresses made of gold, and they go around with these weird-looking mouthpieces on that have massive flapping mouths, and they jump through fire, and everyone's coming up to them and giving them chickens, and they're ripping the head off the chicken and drinking the blood straight from the neck and smothering themselves in it, doing this crazy ritual every year to make sure the demon enters their body. And then the village gathers around and asks it questions and asks for solutions to problems and wants the shaman to be possessed so they can get stuff from it. Okay? So who's right? Is it the person dressing like the demon to be possessed, or is it the person dressing like the demon to scare them away? I don't think it can be both. I don't think it can be both. I think that makes no sense when logically speaking. I don't think your intention impacts it whatsoever. And I'm going to go off the one that's being possessed as the correct one, personally. Because there's evidence for that. There's no evidence that you're warding anything away when you dress that thing. You just think that's what's happening. But where's the proof? A demon could just not get involved to make you think that's what's going on, but really it doesn't affect it at all or limit its power in any way or its autonomy, you know. And I think it would like you to think you're warding it away. I think that would be useful for it, as long as you're not calling on Christ. Do your little dance and think that you're keeping me away. Great. More power to me, more delusion to you, you know. Meanwhile, I'm going to go enter this body over here because this guy's dressing like me. It's kind of, I feel like we have to grow up about this. I'm sorry. I really don't think we have any authority over them unless we're using the authority in the name of Jesus Christ. I think that's our problem. And I think anything that gives the illusion of that is false. I don't think it's true. You get like good shamans and bad shamans, for example, in like a lot of American Indian cultures. And it can go both ways. You can work with the spirits to heal people, or you can work with spirits to kill people. And often you'll need the help of a good shaman to fight off the curses of a bad shaman who sends a demon after you to kill you and make you sick. You know what I mean? It's kind of that's the only example I can think where intention's being used, but it's not. It's either way. It's not good either way because you're still working with demons. You know, the demons are still happy in a body, getting what they want, getting satiated and getting fulfilled. So I think there's a lot of illusions. I think there's a lot of lies out there. I think there's a lot of doctrines of devils which keep people trapped into that transactional relationship, that symbiotic or parasitical relationship they crave so much. But as soon as you get Christianity involved, they show their true colors. They flee. You're in trouble then, and the rituals are rendered useless. You know, it's gone. The power's gone. Because they have no real authority over you or real power once Christ is in the room. And wherever you are, you have his authority gifted to you by him through his sacrifice as a Christian, as a believer. So they're in trouble, and they know that. So it's kind of, I don't think so. I don't think your intention matters. I think you can be a good person, you know, and still live in these cultures. I think that's true. You can love your children, love your mother, love your father, your wife, and have a simple life and so forth, and do these rituals because it's tradition. And you can be a relatively good person on the surface, but Jesus makes it clear not one person will make it to heaven but through him. Not one person is actually good. We're all sinners. We're all in trouble. You know? All of us. And unless you've actually accepted his sacrifice and professed with your mouth that he came in the flesh, you are antichrist and you are not saved. Whether you were a good person or not. It's not about that. It's about the corruption, the sin that we all have. No sin is greater than the other, you know, and I don't think there's anybody who hasn't sinned in this world and broken the law of God. So you might have good intentions, but you still broke the law. So you're still going where a righteous judge can send you. Because if you break the law, there's no exceptions for that. He has to judge you accordingly. And that is... well, we call it hell or distance from God or whatever you want to define that as, you know. Only a righteous judge can do that. And luckily, he gave us a way to avoid that through his son, Jesus Christ, and his sacrifice, because not one person can make it there without his sacrifice, without his blood covering you in that final judgment. And, you know, I made a video about this recently. Like, are we really that innocent? Any one of us, when you really think about it, we like to delude ourselves into thinking, well, I'm a good person, but are we really? Like, we fall short every single day. And it's kind of like, if we want to believe God is good, then we deserve judgment for the bad things we did. You know, a good God is just and fair. That means punishing people when they break the law. But not when we do it. Oh, it's cruel when he judges me for my transgression of the law. Then he's just an evil, cruel, vindictive prison keeper. It's like you can't pick and choose. If you want a just, righteous God, then all humanity gets judged accordingly, fairly. And if we've all fallen short and broken the law, then we all deserve the punishment. So I don't think it matters. Your intention doesn't matter. Like, it's not nice. People don't want to hear it, but maybe your culture's traditions are not of God, and that's a problem. There's a reason why Christianity ripped through the earth, through the Dark Ages onwards, and many people converted. Many of these countries I'm talking about are predominantly Christian today, but still have these sects and these traditions carrying on in small cultures within the countries and the continents that continue these old practices. So it's not in like it's a monolith, you know what I mean? Like, Christianity is rife everywhere. Like, even in like the Nunavut cultures in the northern regions, I think like 70% of the population is Christian. But there are still these smaller pockets of the populations that still practice these ancient traditions. And these are where we get echoes of the past, of what it was like before Christ, of what the demons were doing when they were venerated. It's kind of like a continuation of these traditions. And we kind of like, in the modern world, we make them national heritage things and protect them. We need to protect these cultural heritage traditions. And it's kind of, that sounds nice on the surface. I get it. But are you, at the end of the day, just protecting demonic rituals? Do you get what I mean? Like, we have to really grow up about having these grown-up conversations about it. Like, if two people are too personally attached to these things, and you know, Christ at the end of the day came to detach you from all of it, the world as it is. You know, his kingdom is not of this world. All of these traditions are of the world, and we're called to be separate from it. So that's kind of my overall answer. Like, I don't think your intentions matter. I really don't. And I know people really don't want to hear that. All the wizards and the magicians out there who think they're so smart and clever really don't want to hear that. They want to think they have some power and control over these things through their own power and knowledge and authority. They have no authority without Christ behind them. They have nothing. And I think they are being lied to if they think they do. I think they're being messed around big time. So that's my answer. A long-winded answer, but there it is.
Taking it back to, and we probably need to wrap it up here soon, man. I got other engagements, and so do you. So I appreciate your time.
No problem.
When you go back to the psychedelic stuff, do you think that this kind of goes to the intent thing a little bit too? You kind of open your door, like if you do psychedelics and you go into that realm, whatever that realm is, and to me it's kind of like this energetic world of frequency, if you will, and you're almost like a like it's kind of like a dream state. You have a channel, a remote control, and you're kind of just flipping through the channels of it, and you land in whatever frequency that is. But when you go there, you're kind of, to me, it's like the forbidden fruit, right? You take it and you go and you access knowledge from some entities. A lot of people go and they see these entities over there and they get, egoic transformations, or, they have all these different ideas. Like a lot of artists, like you mentioned earlier, like Led Zeppelin, for example. I think Robert Plant was he said that he was just kind of channeling something. He didn't know where the information was coming from. I think Einstein even said something about, like, he just saw something in his mind and he was kind of writing it. It's almost like channeling. Do you think that you're kind of opening the door for demons when you go do these kinds of things to allow them into your vessel? Because I know it's the same way with Christ. You have to let Christ into your heart. You have to welcome him into your home. And even Jesus said, if you if you tell the spirits to get out, then your house is going to be clean and all this other stuff. But if you don't fill it with love and light, then and the Holy Spirit, then you are going to get 7 times more demons, I guess you could say. So I guess my point is, or my question is, do you think that you are opening yourself up to demonic activity when you do psychedelics and things like that?
Yeah, well, I think it's about contracts. I think it's about spiritual contracts primarily. And yeah, you are, in a sense, making a contract with Christ when you say to him, I'm going to follow your ways, I'm going to follow your laws, and I'm going to accept the free gift you've offered me as a way to, be free from the law in a sense, or at least not burdened by the law anymore. The law still exists, it still stands, it's eternal, don't get me wrong. But it's on him now. His sacrifice was enough to cover you for the transgressions of such laws, and that's a contract, it's a deal, and and you have to accept the deal. You have to accept it. You have to sign on the dotted line that, okay, I'm a slave for Jesus now, in a sense, and you agree to that. So I do think in many ways the rules of the spiritual realm, the contractual, legal side of it all, the demons follow the rules. I think they know the law very well, and I think they do play, especially Satan. Satan definitely, I don't think Satan's ever broken the law. Like, this is how clever he is. You know what I mean? He knows what he's doing, essentially. Like, he's not an idiot. He'll make you do it. He'll convince you to go and break the law. He won't do it himself. He's not that dumb, But that's kind of the trick that's always been played on humanity. He makes us transgress the law rather than doing it himself. He tempts us to do these things. And I think when you are in the spirit realm, we're called to test the spirits. That's kind of what we're told to do. Like, don't assume every spirit that comes to you is benevolent or has your best interest at heart, basically. Test it and ask it who Jesus is. And if it denies Christ that came in the flesh, then it's of Antichrist. So we've been given these basic rules to how to interpret and test spirits. Do they deny Christ came in the flesh and died for our sins and resurrected or not? And you'll find if they say to you, well, Christ is more like a form of mind. It's kind of like a consciousness that we're all trying to attain. Then you've got an Antichrist liar on your hands here. That entity is not your friend. Okay, it's lying to you. And I think that in terms of demons, they don't care about the law. They break it all the time. I think the angels are a bit different, but I think the demons are already the hellbound in a sense. You know what I mean? There's nothing to it for them. I don't think they have any issue lying to you. and just getting in your body whether you like it or not. I think that I really do think they're like the highwaymen of the spiritual realm. They don't care. They'll rob you blind and kill you. Then they don't care. Like, there's no whether you've signed a contract or not. It's kind of like you play with fire, you get burned type of situation. You don't have to make a deal with the fire first. You know, it's gonna burn you whether you like it or not. It's kind of like cancer. It's gonna kill you, spread and kill you whether you make a deal or not. You know, it's sometimes it just happens, and it's just a bad situation to be in. And I think demons are that the epitome of that, a bad situation to be in, and nothing good to be around. So I think it's a little bit of this and a little bit of that. It depends what entities come to you in the DMT realm. And I think we're called to test the spirits. And I think when it comes to the jesters, they are specifically the sons of the angels, you know what I mean, and human women. But I think there are other entities in the DMT realm that aren't Nephilim necessarily. I think there's precedent to say that there are humans who mutated themselves in the early days and became hybridized creatures, mutants, X-Men. They used to be men, you know. I think that they may end up there once they're dead. They may have given up the contractual right, but when they rewrote their DNA, they're no longer made in the image of God, and they're no longer compatible with heaven. So they're stuck here on Earth now. It's kind of like you broke the rules, you suffer the consequences. So it's possible they're also there in this DMT realm in many shapes and sizes and forms. But I think that the Jester specific ones are the Nephilim. I think they lie to people all the time, and they're always telling people different stories about who they are and what they are, and whether just read the trip reports. You know, they'll tell you, oh yeah, you know, we're interdimensional creatures, or a reflection of your collective psyche of humanity, or we're here to teach you how to transcend out of your body and lose your ego, or something like this. And there is nothing more egotistical than thinking you've lost your ego. I'm sorry, like that's an oxymoron through and through. It's such a feeding off our pride type of lie, you know, like, oh, I'm special now because I don't have an ego anymore. It's kind of like, that makes me better than you, which is egotistical. It's a horrible cycle to be in. It's not a good look, and it's cringy, you know. And but I think when it comes to permissions, I think that's the wrong language. I think it's contracts. I think it's deals. And the good thing is about Christ is you can break and destroy those spiritual contracts if you make them. Like, you can. I think the Hat Man, I've kind of theorized that the Hat Man is like, because he's very different. He's not a clown. He's not a Nephilim. I don't know what he is. Some people think he's the devil or something, but I think he's more like an accountant or a lawyer for the spirit realm. He goes around making sure that the contracts are fulfilled or up to date, or, you know, that you're fulfilling your end of the bargain. He's that type of guy. He goes around. He's just like doing the busy work, the paperwork for the contracts that have been created for demons all over the place, you know. Now the thing is, you can make a contract with a demon. I think the demon will break it still, even if you made a contract. But in a way, I suppose it's more evidence against you in the final court, the Great White Throne Judgment, that you have your signature, your tacit agreement on a piece of paper or a contract with a demon. You know what I mean? But you uphold your end of the bargain. That doesn't mean the demon will. I think that's the problem with it. There's a lot of lies and deceptions about the whole situation, but I think they do make contracts to guilt you into thinking you have to keep it up. But the irony is, the great truth is, the wonderful thing is, the good news is that contract is void immediately. You're a child of God. They do not own you. They have no jurisdiction over you whatsoever. It's an illusion. It's a lie, you know, and you can break that spiritual contract like that and walk away, and you don't have to keep at your end of the bargain either. You're not obligated, you know, spiritually, contractually obligated, because that contract is null and void from the beginning, because it's rooted in lies and deception and, you know, your due compensation. I would say it's that kind of thing. So it's tricky, you know. Spiritual warfare is complicated. Vicky Jo Anderson talks a lot about this whole contractual elements of it all, but I do think they play the legal game, but they have no legal standing. So it's very clever. It's an illusion. They're very tricky creatures, pure jokers, pure jesters when you really think about it. You know, the tricksters. Yeah.
Listen, I'm a Christian, so I think obviously I think the same thing as well. I know that there are a lot of people out there who believe that they're really talking with Pleiadians and the Council of Light and all these other things. Like, I personally think that all of that is complete nonsense, and that's the devil, you know, trying to convince them that they are angels of light and all this other stuff. But we're kind of dropped off here on this planet with the only guidebook we have is the Bible. And if you don't get that, if you don't get access to a Bible, if you're dropped off in Cambodia or somewhere in the middle of the jungle, as a human being, you have no guidebook. So how do people find out about God or find out about Jesus that don't have any? I mean, they're just dropped off, and like, so what's the point of all of it? Are we here for some sort of specific reason? Because it just seems like we're just constantly being manipulated by the opposition with no, we're just kind of dropped off with no armor, no other than the Bible, right? But again, you and I have the Bible because we're born into Christian countries, but they don't have that in Papua New Guinea, you know what I mean? Where there's people living in the jungle still. So like, how do we arm ourselves against this kind of deception? And, sort of, why would we not have something like, other than our gut and our intuition, why would we not have something that would help us get along in this reality and help us know Christ better?
I think in this time after Christ, the new covenant is that the law's written on our hearts. And I think that is for all those people who don't have access to Bibles too. I think we all now know what is the law and when we're sinning and when we transgress the law, which is why I think Christianity spread so quickly when it did spread, when people do reach these tribes, because they finally realize this makes sense. I know this to be true. It's on my heart that this is true. I know the law and I know what we're doing is in some way not the way it should be, and it pulls them to it, And I think a fair and righteous judge will look upon the people who didn't have access to a Bible and will be able to have mercy. That's how it works. And I don't know. It's up to him. It's not up to me. It's not up to me. It's up to God at the end of the day whether he judges righteously or not on these people who never had a chance to hear the word through written text format. But I think the word, or at least the law of God, is written on our hearts. So in a way, that's the way to have a relationship with Jesus Christ. Because, the word of God is Jesus. It's not a book. You have to remember that. And Jesus Christ is a supernatural being. I believe in a supernatural God. I believe in a supernatural existence and a supernatural son of God and the rest of it. It's not just like a man. It wasn't just a man or a powerful figure. He can raise the dead. He was a supernatural. He walked on water. He stopped the storm. He did it. He has power. Real power over the earth. And I think he can come to those people in those isolated places and have a relationship with them, with or without a ink on paper. So I have faith. I'm not worried about those people. I think they're probably okay. I'm sure God is doing whatever he needs to do with those people in whatever way necessary. I'm sure he will reveal himself to them when needed in his own time, and has nothing to do with us. That's kind of how I see it. And that's okay by me. That's okay. We're blessed that we are in a Christian nation, and we have access to the written word. Absolutely. But I, as somebody who was not raised a Christian, my first relationship with Jesus came not necessarily through the book, but through experience. That led me to the word after the fact. So I think he can do that to anybody, anywhere, no matter where you are on the earth. So I'm not worried. I'm not worried.
And listen, if you don't have Jesus in your life, I would like to invite you to accept Jesus into your heart right now, since we're talking about it, because I think that's the most important relationship you can have in your life. But I think we should wrap it. Go ahead and end it on that, man. I gotta head out. I got a little league baseball game to coach, and I'm sure you got many more podcasts, especially with Halloween coming up here in 16 days. I'm sure you got a lot of people want to talk about clown masks and all this other stuff. So
sure,
Paul,
sure.
Go ahead and let the folks know one more time where they can find you at, man, and we'll go ahead and land this bird.
Sure thing. I'm just on YouTube. Look for Understanding Conspiracy. You can't miss it. I also have another channel called Understanding Creativity. There's the logo. Go check that out as well. There's lots of extra stuff on there. Art-based conspiracy research is quite interesting. And yeah, just if you want a book, go to Amazon for The Nephilim Look Like Clowns, or Audible for the audiobook as well. And that's where I am. Come and find me. Come and join me.
Thank you for joining me, brother. I appreciate it, man.
No problem. Thanks for having me. God bless.
God bless.
This Saturnalia. Imagine a world where the truth was accessible and relatable. Where red baubles on a Nimrod phallus are forever changed. A solstice celebration where conspiracy and intrigue carry you away. Experience The Nephilim Looked Like Clowns, the perfect book for your weird way of life. Direct from Europe, this highly rated research has warmed the hearts of millions in time for the frosty season. Be inspired by timeless biblical questions such as, what the hell is Satan's problem? Ham did what to Noah? Was the pre-flood world really that bad? And if classic questions aren't your thing, and you prefer your Yuletide to be extra occult, take a trip to the unknown with the spine-chilling Hatman to the psychedelic realm of demonic jesters. You'll get 20 obscure and tantalizing chapters. No other book gives you the feeling of pure vindication towards your childhood fear of clowns. Each paragraph brings the wonder of Christ's sacrifice into your home. For this commercialized nonsense holiday, there's no greater gift for your family than a guide to effective spiritual warfare. Order now and get that edgelord of a teenage child of yours to Christ this winter. Sometimes in this little season, it takes clowns to get them there. To get your copy, do not call the number on screen, which is being used as a placeholder reminder of a bygone time, and don't send a check to any PO box because this is not the 90s anymore. Simply type in The Nephilim Look Like Clowns on Amazon to get your copy just in time to lock yourself away from the world and wait out the pagan festivities.
I want you to get together.